As we read through the book of Leviticus, as we've said before, it's so easy to get lost in all the rules and regulations. And after a while, we can start to think, wow, the Lord really expects an awful lot of His people. Do this, but don't do that. You have to bring this kind of offering, but don't you dare bring that kind of offering. And it can start to get overwhelming, and we can begin to think that following the Lord is just trying to keep a bunch of rules and follow a bunch of rituals. But one thing that we have to remember in all of this is that all of it exists because of the love of a God who wants to pour His life into the lives of people, who wants us to experience the fullness of His goodness, a God who put all of these things into place simply because He wants to come and live among us. So when we read all of the rules for priests today in chapter 22, we know that the Lord isn't just burdening them with a bunch of meaningless rituals to follow. He's telling them that they need to be made clean in every way so it would be possible for them to be God's representatives among the people, so that they would be prepared to stand in the presence of the Lord on behalf of the people, so that they can be made right with Him, so that they can know the joy of walking with Him, and so that through those people, the world will see the goodness of God, and they will come to know Him and walk with Him as well. In chapter 23, we see that their whole calendar was filled with special days and festivals that celebrated the goodness of God. It wasn't like a list of church meetings that they were required to attend. It was an invitation to come and enjoy the presence of God together, to remember everything that He's done for them, and to rejoice together in His love. The Sabbath, it's not just a day filled with a lot of restrictions of things that we can't do. It's a day set aside to rejoice in the Lord and a weekly reminder that everything that's good comes from Him. The Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread was a week-long celebration of the goodness of the God who delivered them from slavery in Egypt and then led them into a new life in Him. The Feast of Weeks, or the Feast of Pentecost as we also call it, was an annual time of rejoicing that the Lord has blessed them by providing them every year with an abundant harvest. And not only were they called to give thanks and praise to Him for that, but He called them then out of their abundance to share with the needy and with the foreigners who were living among them. The Day of Atonement was a time to humble their souls before the Lord, recognizing the depth of their sin, recognizing their need for His mercy, and a day for them to offer sacrifices to Him so that they could be forgiven and made holy before Him. And the Feast of Tabernacles was a time to remember and to celebrate the faithfulness of God who led them through the wilderness and into the promised land. Chapter 24, they're told in the tabernacle to continually keep the lamps burning in the holy place and continually to have 12 loaves of fresh bread on the table before the Lord. Not because the Lord needed those things, it wasn't for Him at all. It was a sign to the people of His continual presence that guides and gives light to them, and His faithfulness to sustain them, and His desire to have continual fellowship with Him. If we just see a bunch of religious rituals in Leviticus, we'll miss the whole point of what He was trying to say to His people then, and we'll miss the whole point of what it means to be His people today. We need to open our eyes to see the heart of the God who's behind the rituals, the God who pursued us in love, the merciful God who saved us from death through the blood of Jesus, the perfect Passover lamb, as we said before, one sacrifice for all sins, for all time. We need to see the redeeming God who delivered us from our bondage to sin and brought us to Himself and gave us new life in Him. We need to open our eyes to see the faithful God who walks with us daily, who leads us as we journey through life, providing everything that we need along the way. And we need to see the God who promises that one day He will lead us into our promised land, where we will rejoice in the light of His presence and feast with Him at His table as His sons and daughters forever.